Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Erad Football Podcast. My name is Iconic EU, joined by my man Jakey here.
How's it going, guys?
So today, in episode 1, we will be listing our Premier League teams' predictions from top to bottom, 20th to 1st.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting season. A lot of new teams in the Premier League, teams that have not been up in a long time. And hopefully we don't make ourselves look like idiots, because I've seen a few
Oh,
Premier League
I'm sure we will.
predictions. I've seen a few Premier League predictions and there are some interesting calls. But yeah, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Right, so starting off, we're going to be doing the three teams we think are going to be going back down or going down for the first time. And Phil, do you want to start us off?
Okay, so in last place in bottom of the Premier League, I have Bournemouth. In 19th, I have Brentford, and in 18th, I have Nottingham Forest, rounding off the relegation. So I'll just talk a little bit about why I've put these teams where I have. So Bournemouth, I think, even though they've made some okay signings for me last season, they was lucky to even be in, not lucky as such, but it was a shock for a lot of teams to see Bournemouth go up. There were probably a few more teams people expected to go up from the Championship than Bournemouth. Obviously, they've got a good foundation, been in the Premier League before. They have a philosophy of how they want to play football. Obviously, this is coming to you guys after week 1 of the Premier League. So obviously, as you'll know, Bournemouth started off fantastically with a 2-0 win at home to Villa, which is a fantastic start for them. But we'll talk about that in the next episode. But for me, they just don't have enough in terms of all the other teams around the Premier League. I think there's just too much quality around. I think they'll be really struggling, especially with the high intensity of this Premier League period, with it being condensed because of the World Cup in November. So yeah, that's why I think Bournemouth will finish last. In 19th place, I have Brentford, which will probably come as a shock to a lot of people because of how good their season was last year. They had a fantastic season. They've got a great manager, don't get me wrong. They've got some great players in Ivan Toney and Buemo, just to name a couple. But for me, I feel like, again, with Bournemouth, they've got a very small squad, Brentford, and with it being a condensed Premier League this year, a lot of games hitting us quick and fast, which is fantastic for football fans, obviously. But I just think if you get an injury to a big man like, say, an Ivan Toney, that could be your downfall. We saw it last season with Leeds. 1 or 2 key players get injured for quite a while, and that can literally hurt your season. And I think teams will have just figured out Brentford. It's like one of those second season hoodoos, like you see with Leeds. They had a fantastic first season, second season, they picked up a few injuries where they really didn't want them, and they just got nearly punished for it. Luckily, survived by the skin of their teeth. And then rounding off my bottom 3, I have Nottingham Forest, which, even though they've made probably some of the best signings out of the 3 newly promoted clubs, they've done some fantastic business. I just think in terms of the quality, I think if anyone wants to stay up out of those bottom 3 that I've put, it would be Forest. I have them only just getting relegated, but it was a toss-up between Fulham and Forest, and I think Fulham will have just a bit more. I think Fulham already had a established near Premier League team in the Championship. That's why they pretty much dominated it last season. Forest, fantastic to see them back in the Premier League, a staple in the Premier League, but that's why I have them in 80th. I just think they'll just miss out for a few small factors, but I hope they prove me wrong because I'd like to see Forest stay up.
Yeah, that's some interesting points. I can say a lot of people agreeing with that. I'll start my bottom 3. A little bit different, other than Bournemouth. I think a lot of people will have Bournemouth going down. I think they were quite lucky to stay up when they did in the years that they were in the Prem. Scott Parker's managing them now, isn't he?
Bournemouth, yes.
Yeah, and obviously, if you look at Scott Parker's last time in the Prem, spent the big money with Fulham, ended up taking them straight back down after getting them taken up. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think even after the amazing start they had against Villa, I can't really see it being sustainable over a 38 game campaign. If they prove me wrong, I'll happily eat my words, but I do think they'll go straight back down, and I think it will probably be bottom. In 19th, I've got Everton.
That's gonna wind up some
Yeah,
people.
that's going to wind some people up, I can imagine. I just think, look, they've not really signed great. They've signed a lot of people who went down last season. Obviously, McNeil and Tarkovsky went down with Burnley. This Onana that they could be signing or have signed, depending on if he signed before recording this. He's an unknown player. I think he played in League One last season. And obviously, big injuries to Ben Godfrey. Obviously, I think it's come out that Lampard said it's going to be a case of months, not weeks, and we wish him a speedy recovery.
Absolutely.
But obviously, they've still got injuries to the likes of Calvert-Lewin, and like losing the likes of Charleston. It's going to be a very tough season for Everton. However, I do think before recording this, they have signed Conor Cody from Wolves on loan, so that's an interesting one.
Yeah, look, he was at the training ground today,
Yeah.
so.
And in 18th, I have gone Leeds, which again will probably rustle a few feathers. I think again they were a team that were lucky to stay up last season. Jesse March did get them playing some good football, and obviously they did start with a blinder in game week 1, picked up a good win. But again, I don't think the signings they've made signings that'll keep them up. You can't really judge a lot of teams off of a game week 1 performance. And I do think there'll be a team that are massively going to struggle this season.
Mm-hmm.
We will get into the bottom half. We'll round off the bottom half, give a little bit about each club. Oh, wrong one. Do you want to go first?
Okay, so we want to do 17th to
17th to 11th.
11th. Right, okay. So in 17th place, as you guys can see, I've got Fulham. In 16th place, I have Leicester. 15th, I have Leeds. 14th, Southampton. 13th, Everton. 12th, Crystal Palace. And 11th, Aston Villa. So what I will say is Fulham, I think, will be in a relegation battle. I think they'll be thereabouts. I've got 3 or 4, 5 teams I think that will be battling it. Fulham, Leicester, Leeds, Southampton, and Everton as well. I think there's going to be quite a gap between 12th and 17th, 18th for me personally. Fulham, I think, have a very solid team. I think they'll need a bit of luck here and there. They'll need to absolutely run their socks off and fight for their manager. If they're going to stay in the Premier League, they're going to have to battle it out week in, week out. Because as everyone knows, in the Premier League, it's the hardest league in the world. You can't be found second guessing like Man United sort of thing. You have to put in the work, or you will get found out, even by a little team. It's just that simple. Leicester in 16th. The weirdest ones for me. I have to put them where they are because just of their transfer window so far. You've got losing Kasper Schmeichel, the pinnacle of your club. Been there through thick and thin. Your captain, a guy who saved them on numerous occasions. For me, I had him as a top 5 goalkeeper in the Premier League. I think he was fantastic. Just like his dad, was calm, collected, a leader. And I think that's just a massive loss for Leicester. You've got James Maddison that could go to Newcastle if they meet the £60 million that Leicester are asking. Leicester literally have not signed a single player. You've got an aging Jamie Vardy, even though if you put him through, he's going to score 9 times out of 10, but can you keep him fit? It's question marks. I know Leicester have a lot of kids coming through, and it looks like it could be a bit of a Chelsea situation where kids might shine and they might prove everyone wrong, and it might just be a complete rebuild at Leicester with Brendan Rodgers knowing exactly what he's doing. But it remains to be seen for me. In 15th place, I have Leeds. Same reason Jakey has them in their bottom 3, but I don't think it's enough for me to get relegated. I think Jesse March has brought in some quite unknown players to the Premier League. He's brought in a lot of players that people won't necessarily know their names of, but could turn out to be fantastic players. It seems like he wants certain characters in his club for the way he wants to play. And obviously, this is after game week 1, and as everyone knows, Leeds got a fantastic win against Wolves. I don't think anyone expected to start off their campaign, which is fantastic for them. They've obviously got Rodrigo, who can score goals on his day. But I have them still in a relegation battle come the end of the season. Southampton in 14th. They're another one. They've got some great players in James Ward-Prowse, etc. Livramento, when he gets fit again, obviously he didn't start the first game of the season. I think they'll be in and around the relegation battle as well. I just don't think they've signed anyone that really fills me with confidence that like pushes them to the next level. They had a half decent season last year, but I just don't see enough. Obviously, they had that Broha who's now gone back to Chelsea, which is a huge loss for them. He looked fantastic for them in the back half of the season. So I think Southampton are going to struggle unless we see something in the next 2.5 weeks before the deadline. Everton in 13th. Same reason Jake has them in their bottom 3. I have them higher up than that, though. I just think a lot of people will write off Frank Lampard, which is understandable. But for me, I think it could be a case of even if the worst comes to the worst, and Everton do struggle in the first half of the season with their injuries and the players they've sold and the players they brought in aren't really fantastic. I do think Tarkowski is a great signing for Everton. I think he's a very solid centre-back. He showed that at Burnley. I think he'll be a good signing for them. For me, it actually isn't in defence that I worry for Everton. It's the rest of the pitch. Obviously, they sold Richarlison to Tottenham. You've got Calvert-Lewin, who's injured for God knows how long. Obviously, as Jake mentioned, you had that injury to Godfrey, which is unfortunate. But he's obviously a centre-back. But for me, I just don't see where the goals are going to come from Everton. You've obviously got Iwobi, who he's just an unknown character for me. One game he could be lights out, the next game he could absolutely go missing. And you obviously have some young kids coming through at Everton as well, sort of like Leeds. But for me, I think they'll be not in and around the battle. I think they'll be mid-table-ish. And Crystal Palace, I think they've got a fantastic manager in Patrick Vieira. I think they have a very solid setup. I like the way that Vieira wants them to play football and how Palace are trying to do it. I just think that there's going to be too many games where they'll probably drop points where they probably shouldn't do, which will basically leave them in 12th. But I do believe that Crystal Palace are a good rebuilding team at the minute. They were a couple of seasons ago, they were in a relegation battle and they're just slowly, gradually climbing up. Since Patrick's come in, he sort of steadied the ship and they seem to be getting better and better as each season goes on. And then last but not least, Aston Villa in 11th. Steven Gerrard, also like Lampard, remains to be seen how good of a manager he could be. They have a good team with solid players. They haven't really brought in anyone that's like outstanding. They obviously have your staples in McGinn, now being made captain. You've got Coutinho. You've got Ollie Watkins that, for me, should score more goals than he does. And they obviously signed Buendia last season, who everyone thought he was going to hit the ground running, but didn't really do so. You've got a fantastic goalkeeper in Emi Martinez that I think will keep them in a lot of games. And yeah, I think they don't. For me, they don't fill me with a crazy amount of confidence to break into the top 10 at least, and that's why I have them sitting at 11th. I just think there's better teams above them at the minute.
Yeah.
And that rounds off my bottom half.
All very, very good points. A few that I obviously disagree with. Obviously, the big difference with my prediction of Everton and your prediction of Everton. But I'll get into my bottom half. So in 17th, I agree with Phil. I have gone Fulham. I think, yes, they did have a brilliant performance against us yesterday, and for large parts of the game they were much better than us, but I don't think that style of play is sustainable. for a newly promoted team. You're seeing it with the likes of Leeds when they first came up. They did have a very good season, but they were susceptible to 5 or 6 goals being put past them. And Norwich are always one of the team to come up and play that attacking style of play. And against competent teams that know how to attack, there's going to be holes. And I think you did see it for brief periods in the game against us yesterday. In 16th, I've gone Southampton, pretty much for the same reason Phil has put them in 14th. I think they've obviously lost the likes of Broja. They've not really replaced. I don't really see where the goals are going to come from. I know, obviously, Ward-Prowse is a great player for them, is probably their best player. But there are big question marks about where them goals are going to come from and where, there's going to be holes in defence. I don't think they've really got a brilliant defence other than Salisu. So I can see them being in and about it. I can see them struggling, and especially if they do lose James Ward-Prowse, which has been rumoured all throughout the window, that it's going to be a very tough season for Southampton. In 15th, I've gone Brentford. I do think they'll struggle, but I don't think it'll be enough to take them down. I do highly rate Thomas Frank as a manager. And I think with the players they've already got, if Ivan Toney does as well as he did last season, he's a goal scorer, they'll do very well. If they do lose them, then I can see them probably struggling a lot more, but I don't think they'll be dead set in a relegation battle, but I do think they'll be in that bottom half. In 14th, I've gone Leicester. I think it is criminal to be this late into the window. Obviously got, just over 20 days left of this transfer window. And, losing big dressing room players such as your captain in Schmeichel. There's been links of Fofana's going to be leaving them. Tielemans wants out. Indeed, he's been rumoured to be leaving. Maddison, obviously, as you said, he's got that offer on the table from Newcastle. Should Leicester accept it? And, Daka had an okay season last season. He doesn't really fill me with confidence as a striker. And as you also say, Jamie Vardy's getting on. He is a goal threat, but he is 35, 36. And you don't really want to be relying on, the senior players to keep you out of a relegation battle. You kind of want to have it done early on. And obviously after match day 1, bottling a two-goal lead to Brentford just shows the worries. And I think it could be a very eye-opening season for Leicester City.
Mm-hmm.
In 13th, quite stark differences, I've gone Nottingham Forest. I think, like you said, they've probably signed the best out of the 3 that come up. And I think it's either going to be a case of they all gel well instantly and they stay up comfortably, or they all don't gel at all and they'll be straight back down again. Yeah, I think they didn't play too bad against Newcastle. Obviously, it's a Newcastle team I predict doing very well. But, there'll be question marks around the players that they've signed. Jesse Lingard has a big season ahead of him. And, I think it's going to be an interesting season for Forest, whether it be safety or a derby-like season. In 12th, much like Phil, I've gone Crystal Palace. Disregarding the game against Arsenal, I think that's a very strong Arsenal team. They do have some brilliant players. They've got the likes of Eze, Elise, Tyrick Mitchell, Mark Guay. They've got some fantastic players.
Zaha.
Yeah, Zaha, another one, thank you. And they've got players come off the bench. They've got that Jean-Philippe Matete. They've got the likes of good midfielders in Will Hughes and Milinkovic. Or Milovic.
Milovic.
That one. I just think Vieira has them set a way that he wants to play. He implies that in the team, and I think they'll do well this season. I think they'll be in and around that
Hmm.
top half of the bottom. And then to round off the rest of my bottom half, I've gone Wolverhampton Wanderers. Uh, yeah, an interesting one. Wolves. I think they've got very good players. I think they have. They've still got the likes of Pedro Neto, Ruben Neves, Pordence. They've got that Eradicate Nuri, who I really rate, and Jose Sa, who's a fantastic keeper. I just don't think they've got enough, and I don't think they've signed really anyone so far this season. And correct me if I'm wrong. And obviously losing their captain Conor Cody to Everton on loan, which I think is a strange one.
Yeah,
It's
unless they have something on the back burner where
Yeah,
they're
unless
about
they've got
to
something planned, or they're really putting their faith in the likes of Maximilian Kilman and Nathan Collins, who are two young players. It'll be an interesting one. I think they'll do well, but I can't see them pushing anywhere higher than 11th. I can't see
My
them breaking.
question, my question is with Wolves, because obviously everyone knows that they sign a lot of players from a specific country. Have they run out of Portuguese players to sign?
Yeah, I was you look at that starting lineup against Leeds. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 Portuguese players starting. You've
Yeah.
got half the Portuguese national team in your
When
starting 11.
Bruno Lage came in, I think his first five signings were just all Portuguese.
Yeah, I
And
think they were.
don't get me wrong, it suited
Oh
them well.
yeah,
Obviously, Jota, Neto, Giammattino, just to name a few big ones. But no, I totally understand where you're coming
yeah.
from.
Shall we get into 7th through 10th?
Let's do it. So in 10th place, I have Brighton. In 9th, I have Wolves. In 8th, I have Newcastle with the Saudi money. And in 7th, I have my beloved West Ham United. So Brighton in 10th place. I think that Graham Potter is one of the best managers in the Premier League personally. I absolutely love what he's doing with Brighton for a couple of seasons now. Even if they lose 5-0 the week before, they'll still try and play the same way. They try to play nice, expansive football. I think they have an absolute solid defence that they don't really touch. I think it serves them well. You got the Dunk Webster combo. The keeper for me is a bit of an iffy one, Sanchez. He doesn't fill me with too much hope. But in terms of the whole Brighton setup, I think it's an absolute fantastic work in progress with Graham Potter. Don't get me wrong, if I had the choice being English, I'd have Graham Potter as our next England manager before the World Cup. But that's a different conversation altogether. But yeah, that's why I've got Brighton in 10th. I think they're going to have a good season, not a fantastic season. I think they might be fighting for Europe at some points, but I think they're going to drop off at times as well. It's not a fantastically huge squad, and again, my whole predictions have just come down to the massive periods of games after games after games, and I think a few injuries here and there, which every team's going to be susceptible to. That's why I have Brighton in 10th.
Mm-hmm.
In 9th, I have the Wolverhampton Wanderers. You have them a bit lower down, but for me, I think they have a fantastic team. I think Bruno Lage is a fantastic manager. As we say, he's just known to find Portuguese gems. He did it with Jota, who then signed for Liverpool and has been a revelation for them. Pedro Neto, I think, is the next one. I think for me, Wolves in 9th place all comes down to Raul Jimenez. I think if you can get him firing again, he gets you at minimum in 9th place, just because that guy is so good when he's on his game. I think they have fantastic players in the midfield, like Giammattino. The guy can still do it at 37, I think, maybe. It's actually ridiculous what Giammattino can still do. He still gets up and down the pitch in the Premier League, and that is not an easy feat for a young kid to do, let alone a guy who's 37 years old, especially how fast the Premier League is these days. And it just seems to be getting faster with the new rules and changes that they've implemented this season. What with the balls around the pitch and stuff to stop time wasting, etc., just to keep the game flowing. But yeah, I think Wolves, for me, it comes down to Jimenez, but I do think that they will finish 9th or 10th. Brighton could finish higher than them, but I have them in 9th anyway. And in 8th place, I have the Saudi money. Newcastle. Now, for me, I think that obviously everyone knows money talks. We saw it with Manchester City, and now look where they are. They're absolutely dominating the Premier League.
Yeah.
Money talks, unfortunately, this day and age, and it can literally turn a club from absolutely nothing to absolutely something. Don't get me wrong, Newcastle, absolute staples of the Premier League as well. They've got a fantastic fan base, the only team in Newcastle. If you go to Newcastle, they're all Newcastle fans pretty much, unless they're maybe Sunderland fans. But I think they have a fantastic fan base. I think they've got a great manager in Eddie Howe. Fantastic appointment. That I think he's going to serve them well. He just needs to just buy the right players. He can't just get swept up by the amount of money he has. He has to make sure he buys the right players, because that was the big
100%.
thing when City first got that money. For me, it didn't happen straight away, and it took time, and that was because they had to go for a couple of managers first because they wasn't buying the right players. They bought good players, like when they bought Robinho on deadline day, that was out of this world. No one expected it. He scored goals for them, and that was the beginning. That was one player that was good for them. And the next season, in comes David Silva and Aguero. But nothing needs to be said about those players. Absolute world star players. Then you bring in Pep Guardiola, who knows how to win, knows how to get the best out of players, knows how to buy the right players, and the rest is history after that.
100%,
So,
yeah.
For me, Eddie Howe just needs to make the right decisions in his transfer window, buy the right players he believes will play his system the way he wants to play and how he can get the best out of them. You can't just go out and spend £400 million on Mbappe, who's not going to listen to him and only going to want to perform when he wants to because he's on such a high wage. That's the worry.
Yeah, I also think if you look at that Newcastle squad, it's a squad that is rich in depth as much as it is rich in money.
Oh, 100%.
3 backup goalkeepers, a plethora of centre-backs, very strong in midfield, and even like the likes of Joe Linton, who's found a lot of joy playing in midfield.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why I think they will finish in 8th place. I think it's a work in progress. I don't think they're going to have enough to get into Europe this season, but I do believe that Eddie Howe and Newcastle are on the absolute right track for sure.
100%.
And rounding off in 7th place is my beloved West Ham United. Now, this is obviously recorded after the opening weekend of the Premier League fixtures. Obviously, tough start, home to City, easily beaten. Nothing needs more said about it. I'll probably speak more about that on the next episode where we go through the first weekend of the Premier League fixtures.
Yep.
But for me, looking at it as a whole, West Ham United are a team that's been rebuilding for a few years. We have a fantastic manager in David Moyes. We've got, I'm probably being a little bit biased here, but I think he is easily one of the best CDMs in the Premier League in Declan Rice. I think there is absolutely no ceiling to what this guy can accomplish in the midfield. And you can see that by how many teams probably wanted to sign him this season. And I'm so happy we kept hold of him and we made him captain. And I think West Ham United have made some good signings. We've got Gianluca Scamacca. We've just signed Maxwell Cornet, who I believe is going to play left back for us, left wing back, which I think is a good signing. He showed in Burnley in stages that he can perform, and I think he's one of those expansive players that's going to spread the pitch out for us, get the ball wide, get the ball into the box for players like Scamacca, Antonio Sojit to get on the end of. I think we have a half-decent squad. I still think a couple more bodies need to come in. We're looking very weak at the minute in defence, what with Naya Fagard, another new signing, being injured for a couple of months. Ogbonna's still not back to full fitness. Dawson's injured at the minute. But I do believe in a whole, of the whole season, I think West Ham United will make it into 7th place and back into Europe. I think we'll be fighting for European football. We might make it back into the Europa League, but at best case scenario, I think we'll make the Conference League again and finish in 7th place.
So it's another Europa League season, isn't it, this year? Or is it?
No, we're on the Conference League. Fifth and 6th is Europa League. 7th is Conference League.
A lot of football. We'll see how you cope with the extra fixtures in what is already going to be a condensed season.
Especially with it also being because Well, not even that. It was a weird one because I believe that was one of the reasons Leicester struggled last season because they were in the Conference League because it's such a
Yeah.
nothing tournament sort of thing. It's like a growing tournament that UEFA have trying to implement as like extra European football for clubs that don't make like the big ones.
Yeah.
It can hurt your season because it's still Europe. You're still traveling.
I also think it's going to be very interesting what happened with Declan Rice come the end of this season. Obviously,
We'll talk about that sometime. We don't need to go into that right now. Let's hear yours.
let's get into the rest of the top 10. So in 10th, much like you, I've gone Brighton and Hove Albion. I think they have got such a promising squad and a very, very talented manager in Graham Potter. It's an interesting one. He's stuck by a very, very difficult to coach 3-4-3 that's never really dipped into a 5-back. It's always been that progressive, just attacking formation. And with the players that they've got, the likes of Lamptey, Trossard, who I think is absolutely unbelievable, and they've just got such a good squad, and I think it'll be a very good season. I think that maybe they could push into the European places. I think it would be a detriment to them should they push into them spaces with the extra football for next season. But I think, yeah, they've got a very good squad, Brighton, and I think they've got a brilliant man in the helm. In 9th, I've got Aston Villa. Obviously, disregarding game week 1, as I said earlier, game week 1 really doesn't mean much. It's, you're brushing off cobwebs, you're finding your feet, and I think they've got a good squad. If Gerrard can get them playing his style of football that, he managed to get Rangers playing with, I think it'll be a good season for them. But obviously, it remains to be seen how good of a manager he is and what he can do with Villa.
Yep.
In 8th, I've got your boys West Ham. And I think that's mainly just going to come down to other teams around you not having Europe in that fight for the the Conference League and Europa League spots, while you still have them extra games in what's already a very condensed season. I think, like you said, Declan Rice is such a talent. He's, like you said, that I don't think this man has a ceiling. I think he's got the world at his feet. But it's going to be interesting to see how you set up this season, because I can't, there's not a recognised midfield. I think Thomas Souček, for the past couple of games and leading on from last season, I think he's been poor.
I agree.
And whether you stick to a 5-back, if you go to a 3-back, if you play a 3 in midfield, whatever happens, it's going to be interesting with the players that you employ. I can see you doing well. Obviously, you've got big injuries at the minute, and your injuries are only going to grow. I think Antonio pulled up yesterday. I don't know whether he came off. But you've lost Diop, who is a body in defence. That Nayef is injured, Ogbonna injured, Dawson injured. You've got a lot of injuries already going into the new season.
All I will say on that point is I totally agree with what you said about Souček, and I do know that David Moyes wants to fix that part of the pitch. Obviously, we did try and sign that Onana that Everton's about to sign. We missed out on that, but I'm pretty sure West Ham are. We're in the market. I know that for a fact. It's going to be one of our best markets. I think we will sign, if we're letting Diop go, there's no way we don't sign another centre back. And I do believe we are looking for that midfield partnership for Declan Rice.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. You are going to need to sign if you want to stay competitive, because that defence is becoming thin, and that midfield looks weak at times, other than Declan Rice.
I agree. One thing I will say, though, and I'm going to put this out now, because I did this a few seasons ago with Declan Rice. I literally said to everyone, watch out for this kid. He's going to be amazing. And everyone say, no. He's gone from a centre-back to a centre-mid. There's no way he can hack it. And lo and behold, I'm right. I'm going to say the exact same thing about our new signing, Flynn Downs. This kid is something special. He's young. He's going to learn, but I think he's going to learn fast. I think 1-2 seasons, if we can keep hold of Declan Rice, that will be our centre mid partnership, him and Flynn Downs. This kid is unbelievable, and that's all I'll say on the matter for now. But just come back to this episode, guys.
Or we will come back to this at the end of the season and we'll discuss it. And
absolutely.
Look, 7th, I have gone Saudi Arabian money. I have gone Newcastle. As you said, money talks. And I think it's a big season for Eddie Howe, because if he doesn't deliver a good season, that position becomes very stressful, and it'll become a topic of discussion within the owners.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, look, they've signed well so far. Sven Botman, I think he'll be a great signing for them. Fabian Schär is already a good player for them. And
scored a rocket.
Oh, that was just about to go into that. That was an unbelievable goal. But obviously they've got the likes of Nick Pope, Trippier from last season. They've not really signed much in midfield. If Bruno Guimaraes can carry on what he did last season, then he'll be a very, very good player. If Joe Willock can find his feet, because I think it's another big season for him. And I think their season heavily relies on whether Alan St. Maximin can find his shooting boots and deliver that end product that we know he has.
Yep.
I think it's gonna be one of them. If he scores goals, they get Europe.
The thing I like about Newcastle at the minute is they, even though you say Alan St. Maximin has to be firing all cylinders, which I agree he does, but I think they're one of those teams that like share around the goals, sort of a Man City last season. They don't have like anyone that you'd say, right, that guy's going to score you 25 goals a season, but they have enough goals in and around it. Yeah. But I think that's why they want to sign like a striker and an attacking midfielder to bring more chances and goals. That's why you want the Maddison. That's why they want to try and get these players in the door as soon as possible.
So I do remember they've also got a big number 9 in Chris Wood. Can he deliver the goals for them this season? Obviously, they've still got the likes of Callum Wilson, Joe Linton. It'll remain to be seen where he starts the season after his heroics in centre midfield.
Wilson for me is much more of a goal threat than Chris Wood. I think you keep Callum Wilson fit, and that's a key to success right there, because Callum Wilson was such a huge member of any club he's been at, really. He just scores goals when he stays fit.
Yeah.
He just needs to stay fit.
Shall we round off our Europa League contenders then?
Okay, so in 6th place, I have Manchester United. Now, right now, at this moment in time, I'm actually wondering if I made the right decision after game week 1. But I do have them in 6th place. I do believe Ten Hag is a good manager, but I do believe he needs backing from the board. I'm going to try and be as slim about this as I possibly can, because I could talk about this for hours on end. But I'm like Gary Neville and Roy Keane yesterday, where right now he has just too many characters in that team that just don't want to run for him. And they just don't want to run for, it doesn't seem, any manager like the likes of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I do believe they're trying. I do believe Man United actually did try yesterday against Brighton. But I'm going off topic here anyway. The reason I have Man United in 6th place is because I do believe they have a good, solid team. I think that if Ten Hag can get it together, they can easily be top 6 for me. It's Manchester United, for God's sake. At the end of the day, they shouldn't be where they are. It's such a weird one right now. But for me, I think they have made some okay signings. They need a lot more, let's be honest. They really do. And as I say, I'm debating whether or not I've put them in the right spot right now. But I stick with my predictions that I made last week, and I do have Man United in 6th place. So I'm just going to move on from them, because it remains to be seen whether or not that stays put on. And in 5th place, I have Tottenham, a team that I believe has made some good signings. They obviously got their Jed Spence from Nottingham Forest, which I think will be a little superstar if he keeps up his keeps the way he's going. Obviously, they have the staples in Harry Kane, Heung-min Son. These guys will score goals, set each other up for days. They love each other. They literally will assist each other no matter what. They obviously have some fantastic players that they've signed last season in Kulusevski. I think he's a great player, great signing for them. They obviously brought in Richarlison. Remains to be seen what he can do for them, but he could add an extra element to Tottenham. The only question mark I have with Tottenham is their squad, and that is why I don't have them in the top four, because of playing in the Champions League. 6 games in the groups, you make it out of that, then you're playing your knockouts, and with it, like you say, Jakey, with it being such a condensed Premier League period, I don't think Tottenham have enough. I think they will lose some games that they shouldn't lose just because of that period. You play either Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Saturday, Sunday. And it's a horrible period. It's so tough. That's why the Champions League is the Champions League, is because if you can literally put it together with a squad where you can do both, like a Liverpool, like a Man City, you're good, because it's a grueling period when the Champions League starts up.
It is a tough one. It is a tough one.
And that is my only question mark with Tottenham. I think Heung-min Son's one of the best players, not just in the league but in the world. In my eyes, I think the kid is absolutely unbelievable. How he stayed at Tottenham this long, I will never know. Sorry, Tottenham fans. I know you're buzzing that he's so loyal, but he could have easily moved to a Liverpool, a Man City, a Real Madrid, a PSG, anytime he really wanted. I'll be honest. I think Tottenham are just lucky he's just a nice guy and has just stayed loyal all this time, even when times are tough. Heung-min Son's been that staple. Even when there's been times where Harry Kane's not been firing, Heung-min Son will always pick up the pieces for him.
100%.
But yeah, that's why I have Tottenham not in the top 4, but a solid 5th place.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with that, because that's where I also have both of them. And I think that United team, they've added well, and it's somehow made them worse. I think Lisandro Martinez looked just lost in that defence. I think they're weak in midfield. And like you said, I have serious question marks whether 6 was the correct place to put them. And don't get me wrong, Ten Hag set out to be this iron-fisted, he ruled like Fergie did, and it went out the window in game week 1, where the band he said he wouldn't start after his antics leading up to the season came on. And I think that's worrying, because is it going to be another sign of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who just bows down to any player that's in the team with a personality and a following?
Well, I'll say one thing on that. I'll obviously touch on this more in the next episode, but the reason he brought Ronaldo on when he did was because he was panicking at that point. They were 2-0 down. And to be fair to Ronaldo, it did actually change the game a little bit.
Don't get me wrong, it was a substitution that needed to happen, but it completely undermined what Ten Hag set out to do. Which is then going to be a worry for every other... Well, it's not going to be a worry for every other player, because it just kind of shows I can push this manager over. It's going to be an interesting one.
I think it was more of a case of you just have to roll the dice at that point. It was a half decent sub, to be fair. He took off a midfielder in Fred, and
that was a silly one for me. If he was going to take off some midfielders, we should have took off McTominay. The man was on a yellow. He was shit all game. It's just
maybe.
It's an interesting
anyway,
we'll
talk about that in the next episode.
And in 5th, I also have Tottenham Hotspur. Like you say, it's going to be a tough one for them. A season back in the Champions League after a year out. If they want to compete on all 4s, it's going to be a very grueling season for Tottenham. And I don't think they've got the depth. I don't think they have the quality to compete on all fronts. I think Basuma is a fantastic player. Is he Champions League quality fantastic? Will remain to be seen. I think Kulusevski, he's proven he's a brilliant signing. Obviously, they've brought back Tanguy and Ndombele. As it stands, he's still at the club. I don't know the route, whether he's on the way out, what's happening with him, whether he's signing permanently for Lyon will be an interesting one. I think Perisic is an interesting one, being 33. He has got the legs, but already this season he missed the start because of an injury. You don't want that to be the case throughout the full season. I think the defence that they've got, barring the likes of Romero and Spence, is weak. Regulon, I've heard rumours of on the way out. Ben Davies, I think, is dreadful. Dyer is kind of just your run-of-the-mill centre-back. But obviously the two main men that will keep them out of trouble this season will be Kane and Son. It'll always be them two, and I think they are both fantastic players. But I just don't see it being enough to take them any further than 5th.
I agree.
Now, we'll guess where the money is, where the promised land is, the top 4. Do you want to start us off?
What are we doing? 4th and 3rd?
4th, 3rd and 2nd.
4th, 3rd and 2nd. Okay.
Yep.
So, in 4th place, I have Chelsea. In 3rd place, I have Arsenal. And in 2nd place, just missing out again barely, I have Liverpool. So, in 4th place, Chelsea. For me, I think they've signed well. I think Koulibaly is a fantastic signing, absolutely incredible. How he hasn't got a big money move before now is beyond me. I've loved this guy for years, watching him at Napoli. He's an absolute unit, to me, he could be another Van Dijk. He really is that good, Koulibaly. He is
a defender.
He really is. He is just incredible. Sterling, I think, is a fantastic signing for Chelsea. He's one of those that he will just keep running. And what I mean by he'll keep running is with Raheem Sterling, even though if he'll go missing, he'll still hurry a defence. He'll still make them put the ball out of play when the keeper's got the ball at his feet just because Sterling's sprinting at you. And as a team like Chelsea, it just gives you the ball back. And from there, you can do things when you have the ball. I do have question marks in their midfield for sure. For me, where's the creativity going to come from? You've got the likes of Kante, Jorginho, and Kovacic, where on their day, Kante is going to be your solid defensive man. He's going to do the dirty for you. But Kovacic and Jorginho, on their day, they're going to be able to deliver a ball pinpoint. But how many days is that going to be for me? You obviously got a fantastic player in Havertz. I think he's a great player. He was a great signing. He fits in where you need, basically. He'll just play wherever he's asked to play, really. I think Tuchel's a good manager. Mason Mount is one of those question marks. Performs well some games, doesn't perform well others. Club and country. I think he's got all the talent in the world. Mason Mount just doesn't put it together on a consistent basis, which is why I put him as a good player, not a great player. That's always a conversation for me. It's what separates the good players from the great players is the consistency they play at.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But I think they will have enough to pip Tottenham, Man United, and I'm even going to put West Ham in this category for Champions League football. I think Chelsea have a solid team, and I think Koulibaly is the best signing that they could have made. Personally, looking at their defensive woes last season. In 3rd place, I have Arsenal. For me, A++ on the transfer window. They have absolutely smashed it out the park. Watching Arsenal last season, you could tell they made chances because they have a fantastic player in. Forgot his name. Their new captain. My God, I'm actually pulling a blank here. Yeah, it's gone. Everyone will know who I'm on about anyway. Odegaard, thank you very much. I kept thinking Haaland. I don't know.
You got the right country.
I did, yeah, I got the right country. But yeah, Odegaard, he was putting balls on the plate last season, and that's why Nketiah scored so many goals and why Nketiah showed out to be a half-decent player in the end. Because even though he scored like 1 in 7 chances, he still put the ball in the back of the net eventually. And that's because of Odegaard. He gave him so many chances. But they've now signed a player in Gabriel Jesus who I believe 1 in 3 chances will go in the back of the net. And when you look at that conversion rate, that is exactly what you need in a striker. They've also got fantastic players in Saka. They've signed a great player in Zinchenko. I actually rated him at Man City. I thought he needed to get more game time. I think he was actually one of the standout players in Arsenal's first game of the Premier League, like I expected him to do so. So I think they've signed well. Arsenal, my only question mark for them will be at the back. I'm still not 100% sure. They obviously signed. Brought back Saliba, who was League One Young Player of the Season last year.
He was phenomenal against Palace
He
as
was
well.
he was incredible in the French league last season, and that's why Arsenal knew it was time to bring him back. So that could be, for me, they didn't. So that's the beauty for Arsenal. They didn't have to sign a centre back. They just brought back someone that they sent out on loan and they knew could do the biz. And the proof's in the pudding. He was the fucking star man on Friday night against Palace. But for me, Arsenal have had a fantastic window. Still not enough to rival the teams in second and first, Man City and Liverpool. But let's be honest, who is these days? But I have Arsenal, the best of the rest, shall we say?
Mm-hmm. On to Liverpool.
Oh yeah, forgot about Liverpool. So, what needs to really be said about Liverpool? Jurgen Klopp, fantastic manager, won everything there is to win. Yeah, for me, I have Liverpool in second place this season, losing out to Man City, simply because for me it comes down to consistency. Liverpool are a team, as everyone will well know now. Liverpool have not started off exactly how they wanted to. Away to Fulham, drew 2-2, and they didn't look that great doing it. But once again, even in a game they didn't look great in, and they probably should have lost if it was any other team. Liverpool have those players and they have that mentality where they'll never say never. Salah gets them out of trouble again. Nunes with another goal. Like, for me, Liverpool, there isn't really too much to say on the matter. We could talk about the difference between Liverpool and Man City for hours on end, and why Liverpool fans think they're better than City and why Man City fans think they're better than Liverpool. And then you've got the neutrals who will literally split 50-50 on the matter. It's like Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi conversation. They're two just fantastic teams who will go at it right to the end of the season. For me, the biggest games will be when Liverpool play Man City, who comes out on top of them and who can stay the most consistent. But for me, they just fall short.
Yeah. So I can see a lot of people agreeing with that top four so far. Following a similar suit, I have gone the same. I think the big worries for Chelsea isn't so much that midfield of where the creativity comes from. I think it's in that final third. Obviously, after game week 1, the game against Everton, there was just a lack of goals. It was a game that was decided by a penalty that was scored by a midfielder. I think losing Timo Werner, which has been confirmed this morning, going back to Leipzig, that's going to be a big miss, because as much as he got blasted for his lack of goal scoring ability, his lack of goal it was never a lack of goal creation. He was that player that created. He was that player that did score goals. Scoring 14 goals across all comps. While it's not great for your star man that cost you 60 million, it's still goals.
I'm very surprised about that. Going into the pre-season, I thought, or coming to the new season, sorry, I thought Werner would be Tuchel's front man this season. As soon as Lukaku went, I thought, right, well, that's Werner's time to shine now. But
I think it's going to be a very testing season. Obviously, do they go out sign a striker, or do they rely heavily on Armando Broja? It's going to be an interesting one for them. I don't think they've got any issues in defence. Koulibaly is an absolute Rolls Royce of a defender. They've still got a great goalkeeper in Mendy, a world class right back in Reece James, Thiago Silva, who's another Rolls Royce at the ripe age of 37, 38. He's still brilliant. And obviously they're signing a Marc Cucurella to, push Chilwell for that left back spot. I think just the big issue is going to come in that final third, where the goal's going to come from.
I agree.
In third, much like you, I've gone Arsenal. I think their defence is going to be a big issue, but I think it's just going to be a case that they'll score more than they concede.
Yeah.
I think their biggest issue in defence currently is right back. I don't think they have a recognised right back. If you want to count Cedric Suarez as a right back, that's fair enough, but I think he's shit.
Yeah, that is the only position in the whole team that's as question marks for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, they started Ben White at right back. I don't know whether he can fill in a full season there. I think he very much is a centre back, but I think, maybe they go into a 5 and play wing backs, play Saka as a right wing back, because I know he can do it. I think it'll be a waste, but, it's a role that
otherwise
he
I
can
doubt
play.
it.
Yeah, I very much doubt it, but I know it's a role he can play.
They have options.
Saliba looks incredible. There was never a doubt him coming back into the Premier League after the season he had with Marseille. And, Gabby's going to score goals. Both Gabby's are going to score goals. Martinelli's already opened his account for the season. Jesus is still yet to, but I don't think there'll be a question mark around goals for that team.
No, not at all.
And in second are going to be my boys. I think our season really heavily depends on the signings we make in the last 22 days of the window. If we don't sign a midfielder, it's going to be a repeat of the season before last. Already losing Thiago at the start of the season is awful. He is such an influential player for us. Henderson, it's Henderson. I don't know what's up with him at the minute. He's not really held that form since we won the league. He's just kind of been on a slow decline, and I don't think he really should be starting. I don't think he's awful, but I seen clips of him yesterday shouting at other players after he makes a mistake, and I just think as a captain you can't do that. As a captain, you can't be the worst player on the pitch.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When it came out that Thiago was injured, and I saw that Gini Wijnaldum was up for grabs, I generally thought you might have tried
He's
to
gone
buy
to
him
Roma.
back. Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I generally thought you might try and buy him back because I rated Gini Wijnaldum at Liverpool.
Yeah.
But
I think towards the back end of the season, his head was already turned on the way out, and I don't think he was as good as he had been over the past few seasons.
oh
But
no,
I
but
think
as
our
a player, when you know you're leaving, it's hard to.
yeah, I think our season really heavily depends on who we bring in midfield. Because I don't think we can go into this season losing the likes of Keita and Thiago in game week 1 and having to rely on the youngsters.
No.
And I think I am going to say this now, and you can come back to this at the end of the season. Nunes is going to score a lot of goals this season. I think.
Oh, no doubt.
25 plus. I think him and Haaland are going to be the 2 top goal scorers this season, and I think Nunes is going to run them close.
Interesting.
I think his movement, when he came on, his movement was brilliant, and he just brings the capacity of attacking and goals. I think, it's going to be that thing. You have enough shots, some are going to go in, and he always is in that position to score goals, and I think that's going to be a big plus for us this season.
Yep.
Now, shall we? I think most people already know who we've got winning the league, but we'll do a little bit on them.
If you don't at this point, are you really a football fan? Let's be honest.
It's Manchester City, isn't it?
It is.
Of course, it's Manchester City.
It's Pep Guardiola and the Manchester boys. So,
where do we start?
For me, well, this is the thing. With Man City, they just have one of the best managers in the world. They have some of the best players in the world, and they had that last season. I mean, they won the league without a recognised striker last season. What more do you have to say about Man City? There's a question mark that everyone would have that they should have been in the Champions League final and possibly might have beaten Liverpool in the Champions League final. I mean, they absolutely bottled it against Real Madrid. They had a great season last year, to be honest, without a recognised striker. But now you come in and you bring in probably one of the most exciting young strikers in world football in Erling Haaland. And not only that, but you get him for a steal. £50 million. That is a steal in this day and age, in the market these days, out of anybody's business. You couldn't do that on FIFA or Football Manager, and I guarantee that. Go and try it, guys. You will not be able to get Haaland for £50 million. Not a chance. So it's an absolute steal from Man City, considering they've got all the riches and they could have easily bought him for £200 million and no one would have bat an eyelid, but they got him for £50 million.
I think
this guy is unbelievable.
I think the big issue for City this season, if there is one to pick up, is going to be that lack of depth and lack of an impact off the bench.
Yeah, I agree to a certain extent, but even yesterday against my beloved West Ham United, you look at their starting lineup and then you look at their bench. They still had Bernardo Silva to come on. They still had Riyad Mahrez to come on. I don't actually see
Bernardo Silva's leaving.
Yeah, but that's to Barcelona, and that's absolute. I could talk for even longer about Barcelona right now, and I'm not gonna, because that is just a whole different conversation in
Might do
itself.
a run episode on it.
We might have to do an
Yeah,
episode just
might
on
have to.
Barcelona, but for me, they just do it. For me, I've literally said this every year, but I actually think adding Erling Haaland, this is the year City not only win the Premier League, but they also finally get over their hoodoo and they do take that coveted Champions League. I genuinely do believe that. I think as long as they don't bottle it like they've done the last couple of seasons, I think they're going to be golden. It's all in City's hands now. They just have to
Yeah,
perform week in, week out, which
they'll
if
do.
you've seen, if you've honestly just coming to the point, if you've seen the All or Nothing Manchester City documentary, I think when they first won the Premier League with Vincent Kompany and Guardiola was only in his second season. If you see the way Pep Guardiola just manages this group of players, it's just unbelievable. Guardiola and Klopp are in a different league when it comes to managers, and yeah, for me, it's just no denying it. But I won't be shocked if Liverpool do win the Premier League. I'll be honest. It's between these
Yeah,
two.
I think it's
But
one of
for
them
me,
that, you know, either one could. I think whoever you predict, I think you could predict City and no one bats an eyelid, or you could predict Liverpool and no one bats an eyelid. It is really between them two clubs.
pretty much,
Yeah.
pretty much. What's crazy is I generally believe if that was literally the turning factor for me when it came down to it was if City had the same team as they did last season and they didn't have a recognised striker, I actually would have seen Liverpool winning the Premier
Yeah.
League. But just adding Erling Haaland, you could watch 3 or 4 highlights from him yesterday, and you know he's going to be a threat in the Premier League if he stays fit. And that's all there is to say, really. I have Manchester City winning the league.
As do I. Well, we will come back to this at the end of the season and see how much of a fool we both look.
Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest question mark for me right now is Manchester United, but we're
Yeah.
going to touch on that in the next episode.
We'll
so
touch
make
on
sure you
that on
guys
our game week
make
1.
sure you guys tune in for that, because there is a lot to talk about. You've already know the results, so we've got a lot to talk about.
But we will head off. We will end this episode. It's been a good talk. It's been an interesting discussion, and we'll, like I say, we'll come back to this at the end of the season.
Yep. Thank you guys for listening or watching. If you're listening to it on your phone or if you're just watching our graphic on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the channel. Really helps out a lot. Make sure to comment your top 20 guys. Let's see who you guys think is going to finish, who's going to finish higher than us. And make sure to comment anything that if you think we were being absolute idiots about, because obviously there are going to be some things in clubs where you support them and we don't know what you know.
Yep.
So we'll be happy to read up on those. And yeah, it's going to be a great season, Jakey. I can't wait. I'm glad it's finally got started.
Football is back and it's the sport we all love. We will see you guys in the next episode.
Take it easy, guys.
Peace.